coming in at number 86 with 64 points, we got Drew McIntyre. And I know that this is a big one for the Podsky Doc JC. He absolutely loves Drew McIntyre. And so we'll get to him and what his thoughts are. But yeah, for somebody like McIntyre, who was like the chosen one, appointed by Vince McMahon on television, and for him to get fired and then have to go out on his own in the indie scene, very much like Cody Rhodes did, pretty much the innovator of that, basically, because a lot of people ended up doing the same things Drew McIntyre did, kind of at the same time or right after. But McIntyre was one of the big ones that whenever he came back, went to NXT, was an NXT champion, then gets called up to the main roster, gets some world title a couple times, and he had a hell of a run last year with Sheamus and the IC title matches with Gunther. He was in WrestleMania this year in that triple threat. He's done a lot, and it's really crazy that somebody who was appointed as the chosen one to be literally fired and then brought back. I mean, it really says a lot to the guy. He really went out and reinvented himself.
Drew McIntyre. So talk about a guy with a long story. Comes in to WWE really, as the chosen one, as it were, and had a big future, kind of flamed out a little bit, and worked his way back and is a top guy there. Very interesting what they're doing with him now, where he's kind of like a pseudo baby face, but also kind of a heel. He's in that gray area, which they don't do too often, so it's a little weird to see. But the thing that really put him on the map for me was I was getting back into wrestling at the beginning of the pandemic, and he was their top guy. At that point, he was the WWE champion at that point. And as a full-fledged Stone Cold babyface, he really carried that championship and ostensibly that company through the pandemic. Just seems like a good company man. It's hard to see holes in his work. I mean, he might miss a Claymore here and there, but and just seems like a good, loyal guy. So, and just what he's gone through up and down, and then what he means now to that promotion. Yeah, had to give it to him. Had to give him his stripes there.
Letting people go ends up being the best thing for their career. And McIntyre's even, he said in the past how immature he was at that point in his life, getting everything so quick handed to him, went to his head. And hats off to him for being able to recognize that. I mean, when you look at this guy, I mean, there's few people in wrestling history that can do what this guy can do. I mean, he's a big, super athletic, long, mean looking dude, man. And when you look at that guy, man, he's such a larger than life character. I had him on my list. I know, I think JC and Mongoose did too. We all had him on our list somewhere. But just from a physical standpoint, there's not very many people in the world that can match him. And I would think that at some point too, it can be a little bit difficult to book a person like that. And even though he can work both sides of the aisle and do it pretty well, there's not always a plethora of people to put him against that are his size. And if he's going against people who are much smaller than him, sometimes that can be a challenge about whether or not that person can work with a smaller opponent, or if a smaller opponent can work a bigger opponent, right? So there's a little bit of a challenge with a guy like that. But the thing that's always stood out to me about McIntyre, and he's not one of my favorite guys in the world or anything, but I do really respect him, and I give him a lot of credit for kind of being the baby face of that company during a really bad time. 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But just the fact that he's so big and so athletic, and he's so imposing with everything that he does. What they're doing with him right now, kind of straddling that line between heel and face, I think is awesome. It's really great right now with where he's at. I like him more and more that I see him, and the more that I think about him over the course of time. McIntyre to me is probably going to be a guy that, even though he was Universal Champion during the COVID era when there were no fans, I believe that history is going to be really favorable to him over the course of time.
I absolutely agree with that.
Yeah, my introduction to Drew came right around the time that I started watching NXT with, Jay Bay and Triggy and the boys. And he was great. He was an excellent NXT champion. To hear, to go back and see all of those things, because I wasn't there in live time to have seen his rise and then fall and then firing and then go to TNA and all of that. But that sort of makes the man. You guys, I'm not going to repeat everything that you guys already said about that, but it's very endearing. And especially whenever we're looking at people that should be like the top of the top, to me, if you had it all and lost it all and then got literally all of it back and then more, then that says a lot. And not only that, was the chosen one that was cut and brought back in and rebuilt himself into, this monster in NXT, and then came to the main roster. And he was not somebody that was lost in the shuffle the way that we saw your Bobby Roodes and even to an extent Shinsuke Nakamura. This guy came in, and people forget he beat Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. This dude pinned Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 2019. I don't remember the year, forgive me. But the shameful thing about that is that his title reign came when there were no fans. However, he's just worked so. I belt until Baby Mongoose graduates high school. Like, I get that. By the way, she's in first grade, so we understand that Roman will have this belt for hundreds of thousands of days. But that was the first time that I really thought that he should have lost, Roman, that is, was to Drew at Cardiff. Because I thought that the build to that was excellent, and I thought that Drew was the guy. And I do wish that they would have pulled the trigger to see what would have happened. Now, they would have never had the bloodline and all that. So, I guess there's that, because that was actually Solo's debut, right? Solo debuted there and gave Drew the spike, I believe. But this guy's great. Those Gunther matches, as you said, were incredible. The Sheamus matches are incredible. And the best thing about him being a tweener, as Andretti said, is that he can, on any given week or pay-per-view or whatever, do something super babyfacey and get the pop of the year. I do hope that they have something up their sleeve with him, because it's not very often that you have somebody that can toe a line like that. And so good booking will put him into the super stratosphere, I believe, and I'm happy that he made the list.
Yeah, and it's really funny that the one thing that I wanted to mention was that he might not feel like this is a bright spot because it was his downtime. It was his downturn in WWE, but I need to give some love to the 3-man band, because I love 3MB. And just the fact that he went from 3MB to what he is now is, hats off to that guy. He's been
somebody mentioned it on Raw this week. I forget who it was.
Yeah, I heard it. I can't remember it either, but he is a 2-time WWE champion, a Intercontinental champion, NXT champion, tag team champion twice. So he's a Triple Crown champion in WWE. So and he was the TNA World Heavyweight Champion. He's got a lot of accolades here, and just hats off to Drew, and happy that he made it on the list.
Yeah, all those Sheamus matches are great, like Mongoose said. But if you're looking for one to watch this weekend, the Fastlane 2001 versus Sheamus match on Peacock is really good.
Mm-hmm.